Good afternoon. My name is Mariana. I am Brazilian. I have a doctor in psychology, and currently I'm doing my postdoctor with Professor Guilherme Messes at the Santa Casa de São Paulo School of Medical Science. I'm also a professor in Phi University Center. And today I'll talk about a part of my postdoctoral research for you. So I'm going to start introducing my research group and a mental health service that we have in the university that works with people with anomalies of self-experience, some in ultra risk for psychosis, others already in first episode. So this research emerges from a demand of this group. This group is born in 2018 and counts with voluntary professionals and students that do research and attend to people in first episodes. So so the people who come to PHENOMENOLOGICAL has some qualities, some experiences that are named crisis by the subject himself, by his family members, the community, and also by health or educational profession. So these are some of the experiences that tend to draw them to PHENOMENOLOGICAL. So despite the diagnostic diversity linked to such characteristics, just a minute. They are accepted by the group because of the understanding that due to their typical characteristics of psychosis or psychosis-like experience, they generate a greater misunderstanding within the social network, difficulties in finding support and coping resources in their social network or in psychotherapy ambit in the private outpatient model, and many times excessive use of medication and hospitalization, not being in accordance with the recommendations of early intervention. They recommend an adequate use when necessary of medication and search for specialized services, and also not being in accordance with an ethical attention to how the construction of meaning about this experience will be performed by the subject that experiences it. So in view of this diversity, the need for further research on the differences and similarities between this experience has been outlined. To this end, I intend to fulfill the following objectives in my talk today. So I'll present a brief state of the art of recent research about the anomalies of self-experiences and identify some research demands, demonstrate through 3 case studies, clippings, preliminary results, and probabilizations about the difference and similarities of these experiences, and discuss the implications of the delineation of the singular and family therapeutic project in face of these specificities. So let's start with this brief state. The understanding of the first episode, psychosis, by phenomenological psychopathology from the perspective of basic self-disorder has allowed several insights about the complexity of this phenomenon. The first is that basic self-disorder is a structural core of the disorders associated with schizophrenia spectrum, characterized by disturbance of the sense of ownership of experiences, minus, and of agency of own actions, diminished self-affections, and hyper-reflexivity. We can also notice anomalies on the grip and hold of the cognitive perceptual world and self-evidence meanings of everyday life, the common sense disorders. Perplexity, anomalous experience of the limits between self and world. So, the basic self disorder would be a composite of several specific anomalous experiences of self. In 2005, the examination of anomalous self-experience is a semi-structured interview was published from studies of this experience. Anomalies of self have been shown to be highly characteristic of this spectrum, prodromal stages of schizophrenia, schizotypical disorder, compared to other psychotic disorders. Some research has been done reaffirming the anomalous experience of self described in ease as specific to this spectrum when compared. But although basic self disorder is considered the core of this spectrum, some ease items appear in disorders outside this spectrum, according to recent research. So assessment of experience of disturbed self may aid in differential diagnosis, especially in early courses of psychosis, when symptoms are polymorphic and overlapped with different disorders. So here we have some researchers by Saz and Mocha that begins to develop these studies, these researchers about anomalous self experience in other types of experiences or disturbances. So, is research typically differences between uses the is research to difference between disorders, but emphasizes the characterization of schizophrenia spectrum as opposed to those that has lower is scores, those other disorders. But there is still little research that seeks to dwell into the features of anomalous self-experience that are present in such disorders. How is present? The description of anomalous self-experience, when still subtle and non-psychotic, like in these first experiences, is of fundamental importance for early-stage intervention. Comparative studies of these abnormalities has the potential to reveal which features are shared with other disorders and which are specific to schizophrenia spectrum. Investigations of different anomalous dimensions of the experience of self and in different disorders and even in non-pathological experience may contribute to a better understanding of this phenomena and these disorders, as well as to therapeutic intervention being appropriated to different experiences. So, coming to our second objective, we'll demonstrate some preliminary results. So the postdoctoral research we have been developing with Piquet aims to investigate the depth of anomalous self-experience of self through interviews, which include the use of EASE and EWE examinations, and the observations made during sessions. Today, I'll present excerpts for 3 clinical cases from this research to point out some differences and similarities in the anomaly of self. Analysis in this research will be based on dialectical proportional phenomenological psychology, psychopathology. Using this methodology is intended to describe the style of the structure of consciousness in each case. This is a research in progress. Some of the cases mentioned are still in very early stages of the interventions in Piquet. The EASE and EWE have not been yet carried out, so the data presented here are taken from reports of sessions held so far. The confidentiality of the patients is guaranteed by withholding their names and any information that might identify them. This research has been approved by an ethical committee. So I'll start with case A. So A seeks assistance because she's experiencing a strangeness in her experience of the world. Being a health professional, she knew about the work of Pecky and sought help. Her biggest fear was that she would develop schizophrenia. A is 30 years old with no history of previous crisis. So in the first week, and this is a line spoken by A, the world is strange. So she perceived this strangeness in relation to herself and the world. And she warns some people close to her that she's experiencing the world like that and seeks psychotherapy. So she reports change in the experience of the environment, which seems transformed and strange. And she says, it's like I had used LSD. However, a decrease in conceptuality-based reality awareness or reality testing is not observed. Loss of common sense and perplexivity is shown. She demonstrates astonishment at ordinary events in her life. For example, the intense color of her shirt. A loss of automatic pre-reflected guess of meaning of everyday events, situations, people, and objects, like being amazed by things that are familiar to her. The naturalness of the world and people is lost, and this leads her into hyper-reflexivity, which take herself in and aspects of her environment as objects of intense reflection. So she's constantly monitoring her inner life while simultaneously interacting with the world. She says, I'm just feeling kind of exhausted. I guess it's from trying so hard to name it. I'm feeling afraid. She also experienced somatic depersonalization, bodily strangeness. So the body seems, as a whole and in parts, as strange. So she feels like the texture of her skin or her hair is changed. She feels air in her chest, weird air, and her voice seems sandy. So in this first moment, we try to evaluate the situation, understanding the characteristic of the experience, the risk and resources she has, and helping her to tolerate this initial moment of uncertainty, giving support and a sense of security. Although she was experiencing reality in an altered way, she was quite organized regarding self-protection precautions. She has already informed a colleague at work about the situation, was staying at her mother's house in order not to be alone, and she stopped driving. I contact her daily by phone to check out how she was doing during this first week. So in the second week, she says to me that she's trying to relax into the madness. So she's more at ease with the experience. She mentions that she feels that things that worried her before don't worry her anymore, like her preoccupations with excessive tidiness and organizations of her home and her work space. She views the experience positively as an opportunity to expand her ways of relating to the world. She also feels emotionally affected by events, less emotionally affected by events in her life, such as the end of her marriage, and psychotherapy searches for understanding her lived experience, but not as a dysfunctional rumination of self-consciousness, because she's already hyper-reflexive. So we try to accompany her moves and not trying to incite that. So in the third week, she talks a lot about insights and questions that were raised through these experiences. So she reports significant decrease of the experience of derealization and dispersonalization. She elaborates in session some insight that she had the previous week, like she perceived herself throughout her life as if she never reaches real connections with people. She feels always a little unrooted in the world and use these organizations as a way of trying to root herself in life. She discussed about her biography, the narrative that's constructed by her biography that creates an idea of a special character that she is. And she constructed the idea that in the transitions through her 30s or in her birthday, she would have a big transition in her life. So she perceives that her birthday happened a week before she started to feel these anomalous self experiences. So she feels that during this crisis, questions were raised and now she has to answer them. So she talks about a decrease of derealizations and personalizations. So she is not feeling the world so weird, but she is demonstrated diminished self-affections and existential reorientations in this moment. So let's just try to run a little bit here. In case B, we have a 36-year-old woman that have significant anomalous self-experience during 2 acute crises without the permanence of self-changes after the event. So she has a psychotic crisis, 2 of them, and when she returns at the same day, she doesn't feel these experiences anymore. So the psychotherapy with her ends up on being the understanding about this event. Why are they happening? So why do we do that in this case? Because she's not experiencing the anomalies of self, so she's not hyper reflexive on the moments of psychotherapy. So we can do that. So for her, it's very important to realize that the first crisis were due to impact on the discovery of the abuse that her 4-year-old daughter had suffered by her husband's son, who was considered by her a son too. So this was very difficult for her and brought back memories of abuse of her own. And she perceives the second crisis as a result of she's still feeling guilty about these abuses. So in the second crisis, she can defend herself from her mother's accusations that she sought contact with the abuser. So in case C, and I took 3 very different cases to demonstrate a little bit of what we have in PHENOMENOLOGY. So we have case C, that is mother and son, which the son is 80 years old, and both experience visions and hearing voices. The PHENOMENOLOGY is called by the guardianship council at the request of the school. So this assistance in this case was made by the open dialogue approach that we use in PHENOMENOLOGY. So the guardianship council, the mother and the son were called to talk about their perspectives on the experience they were all living. Each one of them with different roles on this. So the mother reports that she also experienced hearing voice, but she has learned to deal with them and is afraid to talk about this experience with health professions for fear of being hospitalized or medicated. So the complaints that we hear from the mother and the son are complaints of bullying at school. So this is what is making C suffer. So the intervention here is made in the school about the bullying, né? Since these experiences is it does not involve anomalous self experience, but only a psychotic type experience that's not necessarily pathological. So we are accompanying them, but our main goal now is to prevent the bullying. So I'm gonna skip to the end because I really want to leave space for questions. But I will like to point out here in case C what some research point throughout the continuous model of psychosis that well, we have psychotic like experience that are not necessarily pathological, but when they are surrounded by environmental stressors, they can evolve to clinical disorders. So it's important to have early detection and intervention to provide clinical care to people seeking help. So in case of C, this is the importance of the work with PHENOMENOLOGY, right? So what my main goal here to finish my presentation is to talk about the precocious interventions that we do in PHENOMENOLOGY as a construct and custom design intervention. So we need to understand the different possibilities of anomalous self-experience in frequency, quality, characteristics, because this investigation of the different anomalous experience of self will custom design our interventions. So these interventions are value-based practice and co-construct, but is also important, and my main goal in my presentation and is to demonstrate how different can be the interventions depending on how the persons are experiencing as a whole, and especially experience the world as a whole and themselves, but especially regarding the anomalous self-experience. How is being experienced that, and how we're going to intervene through that. So that was what I wanted to talk to you today. And thank you. These are our